College football is without a doubt one of the most influential college sports in the United States. There are die-hard college football fans all across the country who would be willing to do anything just to watch some college football action. The energy, tradition, and fan bases are just some of the reasons as to why this sport is adored by so many people. However, no sport is written without a history of changes, controversies, and of course, conspiracy. If you watched the last few parts, then you know this already. But part 3 is where things are going to get really interesting in this iceberg. If you haven't already, check out parts 1 and 2 where I go over some general knowledge of the college football world. From this point onward, unless you are a die-hard college football fanatic, many of the entries here are going to be things that you have never heard much about or likely never heard of to begin with. Now, I've already messed up a few times with producing these videos. The Blind Side is a sports drama film written by John Lee Hancock in 2019. So I put the full force of my back into this one. Regardless, thank you all for all your feedback. Of course, the goal is to get this series finished before the college football season begins. Hopefully, there's nothing too major to happen in between then. But regardless, if you want to help out and support the channel, drop a like and sub up to Squidtard Sports. Anyway, without further ado, let's get the ball rolling and move into part 3 of the college football iceberg. Part 3 is where things begin to get really interesting. Some of these topics are things that took me a little while to search up, but if you're a hardcore college football fan like I am, then you might have an idea of what the entries at hand are all about. Anyway, let's get this started. Gary Danielson bias. Gary Danielson is well known as the current analytical commentator for CBS sports broadcasts of college football games. Since 2006, he has been a part of the CBS commentary crew, originally with Vern Lundquist until 2017 when Brad Nessler took over as the play-by-play commentator. Over the years of being a part of CBS, he has received a massive amount of criticism from fans all across the country, with the main gripe against him being that he is biased for or against some teams, specifically highlighting the ones with the largest revenue value. There are many examples of alleged bias shown by Danielson, such as saying that Neyland Stadium is just like any other SEC stadium and making cases for Alabama in the college football playoffs during SEC championship broadcasts, such as the one in 2022, a game Alabama wasn't even in. There are many other examples of Alabama being mentioned during an SEC on CBS game that Alabama wasn't even playing in, and as such, many SEC fans began to really crack down on the alleged bias. Now, my job here isn't to be biased, but from my perspective, I can understand where the allegations are coming from. But other than mentioning Alabama in conversations, I don't really see what grounds you can stand on to say this as if it were a fact. It's common to hear someone say that a certain commentator is biased against their team. I've heard this so many times about Joe Buck in the NFL, so it's no surprise Danielson receives the same treatment. SEC on CBS will be moved to the Big Ten on CBS starting in 2024, so we'll see shortly if these allegations hold any real meaning. The Cheez It Bowl. In the 2018 and 2019 college football seasons, the Cheez It Bowl was a name of a frequently changing bowl game in Phoenix, Arizona. The bowl game was originally named the Cactus Bowl from 2013 to 2017, and before was the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl. After the 2019 season, this bowl game name was changed to the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. The Cheez It Bowl still existed, however, instead switching to Kellogg's branding to take over as the Camping World Bowl in Orlando, Florida in May of 2020. This didn't last long, however, as after the 2022 season, Cheez It branding was replaced, with the next name being the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which is what it is named today. Cheez It branding wasn't finished there though, as they stayed in the same town and stadium, just with a different bowl game, partnering with the Citrus Bowl for the 2023 season, where they currently reside. Where will they go next year? Nobody knows. Team message boards. Every single team in college football has a message board on 247 Sports, which you can think of as a place for college football fans of a team to talk about whatever is going on with their team, whether good or bad. As these message boards are a lot like spaces for fans to voice their frustrations on anything on their mind, it's often resulted in some unhinged comments from fans. If you would like to know what I mean, check out Message Board Geniuses on Twitter. Some of these comments from angry fans can be rather amusing, to put it. Mike Leach curses at team. Coming off an 11-2 season, the Texas Tech Red Raiders football team was in high spirits going into the 2009 college football season. Mike Leach, the head coach, was heading into his 9th season with the Red Raiders. so hopes and expectations were high heading into the season. However, these expectations were not delivered, as the Red Raiders finished the regular season with 4 losses, including ones to Texas and Texas A&M. After a 20-13 win against Baylor on November 28th, the players thought a celebration was in production in the locker room, but this couldn't be further from the case, as Coach Leach explicitly addresses his frustrations against the team throughout the entire season. He ripped the team for supposedly being too good to play the teams that they lost to, as well as exposing any of the excuses heard from the players. Leach demanded change out of the mentality of the team as the moral of the rant. The rant in itself is extremely vulgar in terms of language, but it's on YouTube if anybody wants to listen to it. As for the Texas Tech team, they finished the 2009 season beating Michigan State 41-31. As for Mike Leach, he continued his coaching career at several other programs before passing in December of 2022. Rest in peace to the Pirate. Death penalty. I've spoken about the NCAA and their rules that they have on all the schools that they cover, but I have not covered much about the penalties that they enforce on schools for breaking their rules. The death penalty is the ultimate and harshest punishment that the NCAA can make on a school. The death penalty is when the school is banned from competing in a sport for a year or longer. It's very rare that a school receives this punishment, so rare in fact that it has only been enforced 5 times in NCAA history. 2 basketball programs got this punishment, as Kentucky basketball received this punishment in the 1952 season, and Southwest Louisiana, now known as Louisiana Lafayette, got this punishment in the 1973 and 1974 seasons. In college football, this punishment has happened only one time, with this being the case of the 1987 Southern Methodist University Mustangs. This scandal I'll go into detail about later. Cajun Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly is a college football coach who has been coaching in college football since 1983. He spent a major part of his recent coaching career at Notre Dame from 2010 through 2021. Following the 2021 regular season, the LSU Tigers were in need of a new coach following the firing of head coach Ed Orgeron. The Tigers proceeded to hire Kelly as their new main guy in a major turn of events in the coaching carousel. On December 1st of 2021, during an LSU basketball game versus Ohio, they formally introduced the new LSU coach at halftime. Kelly proceeded to make a halftime speech in which his accent was a little different than usual.
It's a great night to be a Tiger. I'm here with my family.
So in case you've never heard what Brian Kelly actually sounds like, all you need to know is that this is not his real voice. Brian Kelly himself confirmed this later after a video came out of him dancing with a recruit. He said, "I couldn't get my accent down. The word family. Listen, I'm from Boston. We don't have strong accents." 222-0. For this entry, we have to go all the way back to 1916, when the Cumberland Bulldogs went on the road to take on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Cumberland was a program that was just coming off disbanding the football program, yet regardless of the disbandment, they were not allowed to cancel the game. The head coach of the Yellow Jackets, John Heisman, would not allow them to. Georgia Tech had actually been beaten 22-0 by Cumberland in baseball the same year, so Heisman was looking for revenge. Cumberland would be forced to pay $3,000 to Tech if they did not field a team. So the football team manager for Cumberland, George E. Allen, fielded a team of 12 to 16 players, much of which were fraternity brothers and law students, and called it a football team. What followed was what is known today as the biggest blowout in college football history. Approximately, Georgia Tech rushed for 922 yards and 32 touchdowns, not even passing the ball once, and won the game 222-0. No score in history has ever come close to competing with this lopsided score, and it's most certain that anything like this will never happen again. MSU Tunnel Fight. On October 29, 2022, the Michigan Wolverines and the Michigan State Spartans faced off in Ann Arbor, Michigan. The game itself was one-sided, with Michigan winning the game 29-7. As players celebrated, Michigan defensive backs Geemon Green and Jaden McBurrows ran into the Michigan Stadium tunnel where the Michigan State football team was also leaving. Seconds later, Michigan State players piled on the two defensive backs, punching, kicking, and shoving the two players. One player even assaulted Green with his helmet, causing him to suffer a concussion. As a result of the tunnel fight, 8 players on Michigan State were suspended indefinitely. The Big Ten fined Michigan State $100,000, and Kahari Crump, the player who used his helmet as a weapon, was suspended for 8 games in the 2023 season. On top of all this, Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office filed charges against 7 of the 8 Michigan State players. 6 of the players received misdemeanor charges for aggravated assault and battery, with the lone exception being Crump, who was charged with a felony count of assault. Crump took a plea deal, with the charges being lowered to misdemeanors, and he was sentenced to 12 months of probation, which ended last August due to good behavior. This fight was definitely one of the lowest points of the Big Ten rivalry. Urban Meyer's chess problems. Urban Meyer is known as a major figure in the world of college football, being a major icon with several national championships under his belt. Meyer was the head coach of the Florida Gators from 2005 to 2010. Through his time at Florida, he won the national championship 2 times with the help of Tim Tebow, who we discussed earlier. His coaching career at Florida didn't end the way he expected, however. In 2009, before the matchup against Cincinnati in the Sugar Bowl, Meyer announced that he would take a leave of absence due to health concerns from, quote, chest pains, but did not resign from his position. Meyer, while on his leave of absence, still kept in touch with recruits, but much less than usual. He returned full-time to the team in the spring of 2010. Following what was a disappointing 7-5 regular season for the Gators, Meyer announced his retirement, citing the same issue that he had been suffering before as the reason. After his resignation, articles began to come out alleging the creation of a toxic culture in the locker room at Florida, with Meyer denying these allegations. Following 2 years of being a commentator and analyst for ESPN, he accepted a contract as the next head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Immediately following this news, many sports articles alleged that his chest problems were fake in an attempt to get away from Florida, which Meyer denied, saying that he did have chest pains due to mental stress. What do y'all think? Was he really faking it? UAB Football Cut. UAB stands for the University of Alabama Birmingham and is a program that began recently in the grand scheme of college football, beginning in 1991. The UAB Blazers began as a Division III school, but quickly rose to FCS and then FBS level starting in the 1996 season. UAB really struggled to get much going, having many losses throughout their years. In January of 2014, former Jacksonville State head coach Bill Clark became the next head coach of UAB, where he managed a 6-6 record, which was the best record since 2004. However, November 30th, 2014 was a day that UAB would never forget. Following right after their 6th win, something happened that shocked the entire college football world. Sports Illustrated reported that there were plans by UAB to fire athletic director Brian Mackin and end the football program due to the tight budget that UAB was facing. On December 2nd, UAB President Ray Watts did just that, making the decision to shut down the football program along with 2 other sports. The decision was met with shock, outrage, and disappointment. There's even a video on YouTube showing the reaction of the UAB football team as the news of the program's termination was brought to them. Not all was lost though, as later on the program would be reinstated for the 2017 season after a fundraiser raised up to $27 million. They even became bowl eligible that same year. 13 men on the field. It's common knowledge that in college football, 11 players are allowed on each side of the football, 11 on offense and 11 on defense. There have been plenty of cases of illegal substitution, which is a penalty thrown where there are more than 11 players on a certain team on the field. 12 men on the field is a mistake often seen in a sport that is as fast as college football. It's a much more rare occurrence for there to be 13 men on the field, but nonetheless, this has happened multiple times. In 2023, on North Carolina's first drive against South Carolina in the Dukes Mayo Classic, on a 3rd and goal stand, the Gamecocks had 13 men on the field and still couldn't stop North Carolina from scoring. The exact same thing happened again in the same season as Florida's 13 men couldn't stop Kentucky's Ray Davis from scoring on 1st and goal. The most well-known occurrence of this goes all the way back to October 2nd, 2010, where LSU hosted Tennessee. On the final few plays of the game, with LSU down 14-10, things got really chaotic. With seconds remaining, LSU quarterback Jordan Jefferson fumbled the ball, giving Tennessee the win. Or so we thought. As Tennessee had, you guessed it, 13 men on the field. LSU was given one more chance, as LSU's Stevan Ridley proceeded to score the game-winning touchdown. There are not many other ways to lose a game in a more embarrassing fashion. Fake injuries. This entry is self-explanatory. This stands for a player faking an injury, acting like he is hurt when he actually isn't. When a player is hurt, the game comes to a complete pause as the medical staff come onto the field to analyze the injury. There have been many cases of injury timeouts, stalling out drives for an opposing team, but of course, injuries are something you can't necessarily help. They happen. However, one important factor to take into account is that against fast no-huddle offenses, injury timeouts can be used to stop the opponent's offensive momentum. This supposed strategy is something seen by many different teams in the past, but it is something notorious with the 2021 Ole Miss Rebels, led by head coach Lane Kiffin. Now, my job in the Iceberg videos is to simply lay out where the opinions are coming from, not to give them myself. So, you be the judge of this. Ole Miss players would often be seen falling to the ground without any contact put onto them by anyone. This happened many times throughout the season, specifically against Josh Heupel's Tennessee Volunteers and Mike Leach's Mississippi State Bulldogs, both of which are known for their quick offenses. Now, there are many cases of cramps occurring after a play, which as you can expect are very painful, but the consistent level of players going down set up controversy in these games. From the knowledge I've seen, the NCAA never necessarily cracked down on fake injuries, but did allow for schools to file complaints of fake injuries starting in 2022. But is it possible to confirm that a player is absolutely faking their injury? The play. On November 20th, 1982, the 85th rendition of the big game rivalry between the Stanford Cardinal and the California Golden Bears took place. Though the matchup at this point had no major implications with both teams having multiple losses, the rivalry has still had a lot of history up to this point. The game was especially important for Stanford's John Elway, who is coming into his last regular season as the quarterback for the Cardinal. Late into the fourth quarter, Cal led the game 19-17. However, with one last chance to score, Elway led the team down the field, in which Stanford kicker Mark Harmon hit a field goal with 8 seconds remaining. Down by 1 and with 4 seconds to go, only a miracle would win the game, as said by Cal radio announcer Joe Starkey. With the squib kick being kicked by Stanford, the ball was picked up by Kevin Moen at the Cal 45-yard line. The ball was lateraled time and time again by multiple Cal players, eventually falling back into the hands of Moen, who dodged a few Stanford players as well as the completely unaware band who was on the field as they thought the game was over. Moen trampled over band member Gary Tyrell as he scored the game-winning play. This would be known as the play. After the play, the referees attempted to meet up to discuss the legitimacy of the laterals performed. Replay footage was very limited at the time, so it was very difficult to get a read on where the ball was at all points. The final decision was that the play would stand, and Cal would win the game 25-20. This play was seen as the biggest miracle in college football history, being placed second in SportsCenter's top 40 moments in sports history. Wazoo Popcorn Guy. There have been some amusing reactions from the stands from fans, but this one was one of the most well-known reactions. As the Washington State Cougars were getting blown out by the Stanford Cardinal, the camera pointed to a very depressed Washington State fan eating popcorn in the rain. Same bro. Same. Fourth down spike. If you are in a situation where the clock is going down late in the game and you don't have a timeout to stop it, a spike is a play in which the quarterback throws the ball onto the ground. This play stops the clock until the next play, allowing time for players to recuperate. Fourth down is the last down on a drive. If you go for it on fourth down and fail to convert the drive to a first down, the ball is turned over on downs, giving the ball to the opposition. You can see how these two things do not complement each other in the slightest. Nonetheless, it has happened before. Specifically, two different game-losing occasions. In 2015, down 31-24, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights were faced with a fourth down at the 50-yard line with the clock going down under 10 seconds. Rather than doing the only thing they could do in the situation, which was a Hail Mary, they opted to spike the ball, not knowing it was fourth down. This happened again in 2020, in which Syracuse was faced with a similar situation against NC State, down 36-29, and proceeded to lose track of downs, performing a fourth down spike. The difference here is that while Rutgers did this at the 50-yard line, Syracuse did it in the red zone, which is when they had less than 20 yards to go to score. Whether this is a coaching blunder or a quarterback issue, it's hard to lose a game in a more embarrassing format than this. Dick Coffey. Dick Coffey was an Alabama Crimson Tide fan who pulled off one of the most remarkable streaks in history. Starting in 1946, he attended every single Alabama football game, attending over 700 consecutive football games. Unfortunately, Coffey passed away in June 2013 at the age of 91, but he left behind one of the greatest accomplishments in sports history. In 2010, he was named the #1 college football superfan in America. Les Miles Clock Management. Les Miles was the head coach of the LSU Tigers from 2005 to 2016. In his time there, he had many highlights, including a national championship in 2007 and 2 SEC championships. However, he had his fair share of lowlights as well, infamous for his sometimes miserable clock management. These 2 prime examples come to mind. In 2009, LSU lost to the Ole Miss Rebels 25-23. LSU let 20 seconds pass them by as they struggled to get the field goal team on the field following a catch that put them down to the Ole Miss 6-yard line. They were not able to get the field goal team on in time, losing the game and not even getting the chance to kick what very well could have been the game-winning field goal. In 2016, Les Miles let a large amount of time pass him by as LSU was down 18-13 to Auburn in the 4th quarter. On the final play of the game, quarterback Danny Etling threw the game-winning touchdown to DJ Chark to win the game for LSU. Or so would have been the case if it not been for the fact they did not snap the ball in time. This sealed an Auburn victory and moreover sealed the fate of Les Miles as he was relieved of his duties as LSU's coach after the game. Joe Paterno. Joe Paterno was the head coach of the Penn State Nittany Lions from 1966 all the way up to 2011. He won 2 national championships and 3 Big Ten championships in his time with Penn State, as well as carried the record for most bowl appearances. Unfortunately, these achievements are not what he is known for in college football history. On November 5th, 2011, former Penn State defensive coordinator Jerry Sandusky was arrested on 52 counts of child sexual abuse between 1994 and 2009, some of which allegedly occurred on Penn State's campus. One incident in 2001 was allegedly seen by graduate assistant Mike McQueary, who reported the incident to Paterno. Paterno notified athletic director Tim Curley and later notified Gary Schultz. These details were reported by Paterno in a 2011 grand jury investigation. While Paterno was not accused of any wrongdoing, investigators questioned Paterno about his failure to notify officials after the incident, specifically law enforcement. Regardless of the support for Paterno, the Penn State Board of Trustees elected to eliminate Paterno's contract effective immediately, meaning that Paterno was forced to leave before coaching another game. Following the news, Penn State students rioted in the streets, demanding that the termination would be overturned. However, the board stayed strong in their decision. On January 22, 2012, Paterno would pass away, bringing more fuel to the fire. Later, in an independent investigation performed by former FBI Director Louis Freeh and the Penn State Board of Trustees, they uncovered contradictions in Paterno's original testimony, reporting that he, along with Curley and Schultz, protected Sandusky's actions to protect the publicity surrounding the program and, quote, failed to protect against a child sexual predator harming children for over a decade. There's much more information to this case before and after the allegations, but that is the basic rundown of what happened to Paterno's tainted legacy. 7th overtime. On November 24, 2018, Jimbo Fisher's Texas A&M Aggies took on Ed Orgeron's LSU Tigers. Going into the end of regulation, the game was tied at 31 each. What followed was 7 overtime periods, which tied for the most overtime periods with 4 other games. The game went on for a total of nearly 5 hours, with both seemingly never losing gas. Finally, in the 7th overtime, LSU's failed 2-point conversion gave the Aggies the chance they needed to win by scoring their own 2-point conversion, winning the game 74-72. This game holds the title for second most points scored in a football game since the NCAA began to record scores in 1937, being only behind a Division II matchup in 2008 between Abilene Christian and West Texas A&M, where 161 points were scored. It is believed that this game is the reason why overtime rules were later changed in college football. Nick Saban versus Jimbo Fisher. These two coaches used to work with each other in college football, being on the same LSU coaching staff at one point. These two had a feud in college football that was not shared with many coaches, dating back to 2017, where after leaving Florida State, Jimbo Fisher would become the next head coach of the Texas A&M Aggies. Through the years, the two went on as regular business. Even following a huge Texas A&M upset against Alabama in 2021, there was no real sign of a feud between the two coaches. This all changed, however, in 2022 as Texas A&M signed the #1 recruiting class in the nation, ahead of Alabama's #2 class. Speaking at a fundraiser in Birmingham in May, Saban took a direct jab at A&M when speaking about the consequences of NIL. He said, quote, "I know the consequence is going to be difficult for the people who are spending tons of money to get players. You read about it, you know who they are. We were second recruiting last year, A&M was first. A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and likeness. We didn't buy one player. Fischer made a quick rebuttal to this statement, calling Saban a narcissist, calling his comments despicable. The feud very quickly picked up spotlight in the college football world, even leaving Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin, quote, speechless. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey would later reprimand both coaches, pointing out, quote, public criticism of any kind does not resolve issues and creates a distraction from seeking solutions for the issues facing college athletics today. Though both coaches made it clear that they were done worrying about each other's issues, the offseason feud sparked extra interest in the October matchup between the two teams, a game in which Alabama won 24-20. Nowadays, the two coaches are on better terms, despite Fischer's departure from Texas A&M in 2023. Ninth overtime. You thought 7 overtimes were as bad as it gets? Not quite. On October 23, 2021, 5-1 Penn State was coming off a loss to number 3 Iowa. James Franklin and the Nittany Lions were hosting the 2-5 Illinois Fighting Illini. The game was a low-scoring dogfight, being tied at 10 at the end of regulation. Both teams kicked field goals to keep the game going to the second overtime, which was not any different, as both teams kicked field goals again. This was the first year of the newly invented overtime system, which made the third overtime and beyond alternating 2-point conversions. Both teams failed to score in the third overtime, and the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth, and the seventh. Finally, in the 8th overtime, Brandon Peters, Illinois' backup quarterback for previously injured Arthur Satowski, threw a completion to Isaiah Williams, but Penn State responded with a scoring run by Noah Cain. In the 9th overtime, Penn State once again failed to convert. However, Illinois' Peters threw a completion to Casey Washington to win the game. This is the one and only case of a game in NCAA football going to 9 overtimes. If anyone is curious, despite the huge win against number 7 Penn State on the road, Illinois ended the season 5-7. Penn State was never able to recover from the loss as they lost 3 of the next 5 games and ended the season 7-6 after a loss to Arkansas in the Outback Bowl. 1 second left. 1 second left can be in reference to a few different moments in college football, but I'll go over one in particular which was the most impactful. On November 1st, 2008, a significant rivalry matchup was played between number 1 Texas and the 6th and 7th ranked Texas Tech, depending on which poll you pay attention to. Both teams were undefeated. With 1:29 left in the game, Texas Tech was down 33-32 to the Longhorns, but quickly drove down the field thanks to the work of quarterback Graham Harrell. Now at the Texas 28-yard line, Harrell's pass was deflected by Blake Gideon, who missed a potential interception to seal the win for Texas. On the next play, with 8 seconds to go, Harrell passed to Michael Crabtree, who broke a tackle next to the sidelines and scored a touchdown. Thousands of Texas Tech fans rushed the field but had to be moved away by officials as there was still 1 second left in the game. Regardless, Texas wasn't able to do enough to score, and the Red Raiders won in one of the most significant games of the season. 1 second left can also be in reference to another legendary moment in sports history, the kick 6, making it the 3rd time now I've mentioned this entry. Marco Wilson's shoe throw. At the end of the 2020 regular season, the number 6 Florida Gators and the 3-5 LSU Tigers met in Tigers Stadium, a game which was postponed due to widespread outbreaks of COVID-19 on the Florida football team. With playoff hopes alive and Heisman hopes for Florida quarterback Kyle Trask, the Florida Gators were expected to run this game and win easily, being favored by over 3 touchdowns. However, this was far from the case, as LSU and Florida were tied at 34 with minimal time left in the 4th quarter. Florida managed to get a 3rd down stop against LSU, but before LSU lined up in punt formation, Florida cornerback Marco Wilson took LSU Cole Taylor's shoe and threw it 20 yards downfield, resulting in an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty and giving LSU a fresh set of downs. This resulted in LSU kicker Cade York hitting a career-long 57-yard field goal, giving LSU the lead with 23 seconds left. Though Florida got close enough for kicker Evan McPherson to attempt a 51-yard field goal, the kick sailed to the left, sealing LSU's win and ending Florida's playoff hopes. Though Marco Wilson was heavily criticized on the internet, Wilson doubled down on his decision. In summer of 2023 on the Footballville podcast, he was asked if he would throw the shoe again if he had the chance, in which in response, he said, 100%. Bluegrass Miracle. On November 9th, 2002, the number 16 LSU Tigers traveled to Lexington, Kentucky to face off against the 6-3 Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky was an underdog against the defending SEC champions, but this did not deter the Wildcats. Down 24-14 in the fourth quarter, they climbed their way back into the game with a 13-3 run to tie the game at 27. Kentucky on their final drive opted to kick a field goal at the LSU 11-yard line. After using their final timeout with 15 seconds left, Kentucky scored the field goal, now leading LSU 30-27. At their own 26-yard line, LSU was forced to go for the desperation Hail Mary. The chances to score were almost zero, as LSU quarterback Marcus Randall did not have the arm to throw the ball over 70 yards down the field. Nonetheless, there were no other options. Dialing up what they dubbed the Dash Right 93 Berlin, Randall threw the ball from the LSU 18-yard line. Believing they had already won, Kentucky fans began to rush the field. However, the ball was deflected right into the hands of striding wide receiver Davari Henderson, who rushed the ball all the way back to the end zone for the game-winning touchdown, winning the game 33-30 for LSU. Many Kentucky fans did not realize they had lost, so they continued to celebrate on the field, tearing down the goalpost. Jefferson Pilot Sports play-by-play announcer Dave Neal called the play the most shocking, improbable, unbelievable sequence of events. Even Nick Saban, the coach of LSU, was shocked at how lucky events turned out for the Tigers. The play became permanently known as the Bluegrass Miracle, after a poll was conducted on the LSU Sports website days later. Reggie Bush improper benefits. Reggie Bush is a running back who played for the USC Trojans from 2003 to 2005. He led the Trojans to 2 national championship victories in 2003 and 2004. He won the Heisman Trophy in 2005, as well as the Doak Walker and Walter Camp Awards, among others. Unfortunately, this is not the end of the story, as in 2006, reports surfaced raising questions about whether Bush's family received gifts in violation of NCAA policies. Sports agent Lloyd Lake sued Reggie Bush and his family in November of 2007. This NCAA investigation was merged with another one, which went after former USC basketball player O.J. Mayo for the same allegations. On December 28, 2009, the case proceeded to trial, and by June 10, 2010, the NCAA cracked down on USC in a major way, concluding that Bush had received gifts from Lake and his partner, Michael Michaels, from at least December 2004 onward, including a limousine ride to the 2005 Heisman Trophy presentation. USC was given 4 years probation, a bowl ban for the 2010 and 2011 seasons, a loss of 30 scholarships over 3 years, and USC was forced to vacate the last 2 wins of the 2004 season along with all wins from the 2005 season. On top of all of this, Bush's accolades were forfeit, including his 2005 Heisman Trophy, which he voluntarily forfeit. They say time heals all wounds though, and after petitions from Bush to have his trophy reinstated, they had his Heisman Trophy returned to him on April 24, 2024, citing enormous changes in the college football landscape. You guys tell me, is this a win for NIL? Hugh Freeze scandals. Hugh Freeze was a former baseball player and current football coach. He coached for many schools, including tight end coach for Ole Miss, offensive coordinator and head coach for Arkansas State, and from 2012 to 2016, he was the head coach of the Ole Miss Rebels. Freeze was one of the only 3 SEC coaches to beat Nick Saban in back-to-back years, joining Steve Spurrier and Les Miles. However, it was also at Ole Miss where he was caught in a significant violation of NCAA rules. In January of 2016, the NCAA charged Ole Miss with numerous recruiting violations. This was after an investigation showed evidence of Ole Miss players receiving impermissible benefits from boosters and employees. Ole Miss officials denied these allegations, claiming they happened under the coach before Freeze, that being Houston Nutt. The investigation took a turn for the worse for Freeze when former star offensive tackle Laramie Tunsil actively admitted to taking money from an assistant of Freeze. Freeze was accused of not monitoring his assistants. In February of 2017, Ole Miss withdrew from bowl participation for the following season. The rabbit hole got deeper, however, as in July of 2017, Houston Nutt sued Ole Miss for defamation regarding the comments from earlier, which was met with a public apology from Ole Miss. Along with the lawsuit, Nutt's attorneys filed a Freedom of Information request for calls Freeze made on his university-issued cell phone during January 2016. For those who are not aware, Freedom of Information relates to the public's ability to access government records, meetings, and other information. Through this information, Nutt's attorneys found a pattern of calls given to female escort services, and with nowhere left to run, Freeze was given an ultimatum from Ole Miss Chancellor Jeff Fischer and Athletic Director Ross Bjork: resign or be fired. Freeze resigned on July 20th, 2017. As a result of the violations committed under both Nutt and Freeze, Ole Miss received a 2-year postseason ban, among other punishments. On December 7, 2018, Freeze was given an opportunity to coach at the Liberty Flames, which he accepted, winning 7 games for the Flames and qualifying them for their first bowl game in school history. It wasn't until November 29, 2022, where Freeze left the Flames to become the next head coach of the Auburn Tigers with a 6-year contract of $6.5 million. This is where he currently resides. Autograph suspension. Before the inclusion of NIL into college football, signing autographs for any revenue gain was prohibited according to NCAA bylaw 12521, which forbids a player from permitting the use of his or her name or picture to advertise, recommend, or promote directly the sale or use of a commercial product or service of any kind. Several players have been punished for violating said rule, including LSU defensive tackle Mason Smith, Georgia's running back Todd Gurley, and Texas A&M quarterback Johnny Manziel. These players are suspended for a game or more as punishment for breaking the rule. Gurley was suspended for 4 weeks after Gurley accepted over $3,000 of memorabilia according to the NCAA. Is this another win for NIL? 4th and 25. This is in reference to one of the most crazy plays of the 2015 rivalry matchup between the Arkansas Razorbacks and the 18th ranked Ole Miss Rebels. The match was an offensive shootout, as at the end of regulation, the teams are tied at 45. After Ole Miss scored a touchdown to make the score 52-45, it was up to Arkansas to score or lose. Met with a 4th and 25, the game was seemingly over, but on this play, Arkansas quarterback Brandon Allen completed a pass to Hunter Henry, who flung the ball backwards as a lateral towards running back Alex Collins, who picked the ball up and ran it for a 31-yard gain and a first down. Arkansas proceeded to score a touchdown, but rather than keeping the game going, they chose to go for 2, which resulted in a sack. Or it would if Ole Miss's Marquez Haynes wasn't called for a face mask, giving the Razorbacks one more chance. On their second chance, Allen ran the ball into the end zone to score the 2-pointer and win the game for Arkansas 53-52. When talking about the 4th and 25, Arkansas head coach Brett Bielema called the play divine intervention. Dabo's transfer portal approach. Dabo Sweeney is the current head coach of the Clemson Tigers. Through his time at Clemson, he won 2 national championships in 2016 and 2018, 8 ACC championships, as well as many other accolades. Through Dabo Sweeney's time at Clemson, the Tigers were in the national championship spotlight conversation for a significant amount of time. However, with the rise of the transfer portal, most teams in college football have taken advantage of the transfer portal, taking many players, or in some cases, building teams with the portal. With the case of Clemson, however, the transfer portal is used rarely, if at all. Sweeney actively refuses to invest in the transfer portal, claiming, "We built this program in God's name, image, and likeness." The lack of use of the portal has brought unwanted negative attention to Dabo Sweeney, especially since Clemson has not made the college football playoff since 2019. The criticism has only picked up steam after Clemson's 2023 season, finishing 9-4, the worst finish in over 10 years. In an interview with ESPN analyst Roddy Jones, Sweeney stated that most of the guys in the portal aren't good enough to play for us. This was more in reference to the style of play Clemson has rather than the talent deposit, but regardless, this sparked much more controversy in the way that Sweeney is running the Clemson program in the current era of college football. Sweeney has made no decisions to open up to the idea of the transfer portal and likely never will, but time will tell to see if he is correct in his own assumptions. The night Knoxville burned. Before we get to this moment, you need to know a little backstory, specifically the name of Lane Kiffin, who is a former and current head coach in college football. Kiffin was an assistant coach and coordinator at many places, including Fresno State, Colorado State, and USC. His first college football head coaching job was at the Tennessee Volunteers in December of 2008, following 2 years at the Oakland Raiders. Tennessee had just fired longtime head coach Phil Fulmer, and when Kiffin was brought on by the Volunteers, it was met with mixed feelings. On February 5th, 2009, before the season even began, Kiffin accused then Florida head coach Urban Meyer of violating NCAA recruiting rules. Ironically, while calling out the opposing coach, he committed a violation himself, as it's against the rules to mention a recruit by name. Because of his actions, Mike Slive, then SEC commissioner, publicly reprimanded Kiffin. Kiffin's 2009 season with the Volunteers had a fair share of ups and downs, finishing with a 7-6 season and a blowout loss to Virginia Tech in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. A rough start, but Vol fans were optimistic for the future. However, on January 12th at around 10 o'clock p.m. at night, Kiffin held an outgoing press conference letting media and fans know that he enjoyed his time in Knoxville and that he was leaving Tennessee to become the new head coach of the USC Trojans. Coaches, players, and staff were shocked by the news as they were not aware of his intentions until the night of the departure. As for Tennessee fans, they were irate. With bubbling feelings of shock and betrayal, they took to the streets of Johnny Majors Drive, burning mattresses in protest to the news of Kiffin's sudden flee. This would be known as the night that Tennessee fans would never forget, as many hold a grudge against the coach to this day. This grudge culminated in a matchup which presents another interesting story, which I'll get into in a later entry. Dyer was down. This is in reference to a specific moment in the 2011 Tostitos BCS National Championship game between the Oregon Ducks and the Auburn Tigers. The game overall was a very close-fought matchup. Nobody scored until the second quarter, where Auburn led 16-11 over Oregon. Late in the fourth quarter, Oregon would score a touchdown to tie the score at 19-all. With a little more than 2 minutes left to go, Auburn drove down the field, including a controversial run by running back Michael Dyer, where he appeared to be tackled after 6 to 7 yards, but when he fell on Oregon defender Eddie Pleasant, his knees nor the ball never hit the ground, so he was never ruled down, and thus he ran away and gained 37 yards compared to the 6 he would have if he was ruled down. At the Oregon 1-yard line, he rushed for a touchdown, but the call was reversed as Dyer's knee did hit the ground this time before getting into the end zone. Rather than risking anything with 2 seconds left to go, Auburn field goal kicker Wes Byram kicked the game-winning 19-yard field goal, gifting Auburn with a national championship. Many think that if Dyer was ruled down originally, that Oregon would have very well won this game. But what do you think? Was he down? Malcolm Kelly Freestyle. Malcolm Kelly was a wide receiver who played for the Oklahoma Sooners from 2005 to 2007. He had a total of 2,285 yards receiving with 21 touchdowns. Following a win in the 2006 Big 12 championship against Nebraska, Oklahoma players took to the locker room, where Kelly performed a freestyle rap with the team. When the video was shown online, it gained a significant amount of popularity. People still talk about it to this day, and the lyrics are even on Genius. Fun fact, Malcolm Kelly is currently a wide receivers coach for the TCU Horned Frogs. 45.5 point spread. This is the number that belongs to the biggest point spread upset in college football history. On September 2nd, 2017, the FCS opponent Howard Bison took on 45.5 point favorite, the UNLV Rebels. Howard's Kalen Newton, brother of earlier entry, Cam Newton, ran for 190 yards and scored twice, one of them being the final touchdown that gave Howard the win. This upset taking place in Vegas is a whole nother layer of irony. Harvey Updike. Before mentioning this individual, it's important to know the history of Toomer's Corner. Toomer's Corner is a street corner that marks the northeasternmost reach of the campus of Auburn University, and the beginning of downtown Auburn, Alabama. As a tradition, Auburn fans after every significant win take rolls of toilet paper and throw it into the 2 oak trees that cover Toomer's Corner. A man by the name of Harvey Updike made national headlines when in 2010 he poisoned the 2 trees in the corner. Although it was not revealed to be him until he confessed to his crime in 2011 on the Paul Feinbaum show. He said, quote, "The weekend after the Iron Bowl, I went to Auburn because I live 30 miles away, and I poisoned the 2 Toomer trees. I'd put Spike ADDF in them. They're not dead yet, but they definitely will die." Updike pleaded guilty to a felony charge of criminal damage in 2013 and spent time in jail. who is also required to pay $800,000 of restitution, in which he has only paid $7,000 of. In late July of 2020, Updike passed away due to natural causes at the age of 71. As for the 2 trees that were poisoned, they have since been replanted twice due to someone by the name of Joaquin Wiest setting them on fire after a 2016 win over LSU, which I will speak about later. 2007, also dubbed the year of the upset, or the curse of number 2, was in the mind of most college football fans who remember it, the most unpredictable, crazy college football season in history. The 2007 season was highlighted by the remarkable frequency with which ranked teams fell to lower ranked or unranked opponents. Teams ranked in the top 5 of the AP poll were defeated by unranked opponents 13 times during the regular season, setting a new record in the history of the AP poll when at least 20 teams were ranked. This change started with an earlier entry, Appalachian State's huge upset over number 5 Michigan. Following that, Stanford defeated number 2 USC, Oregon State over number 2 California, Rutgers over number 2 South Florida, yes, I did say that, second ranked South Florida, Arizona over number 2 Oregon, number 4 Missouri over number 2 Kansas, and Pittsburgh over number 2 West Virginia. Along with these upsets, number 1 LSU lost to Kentucky in 3 overtimes, and when they returned to number 1, they lost in 3 overtimes again to Arkansas. Along with this, number 1 Missouri lost to number 9 Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. After all of this chaos, the national championship matchup featured 11-1 Ohio State and 11-2 LSU, where the Tigers knocked off the Buckeyes 38-24. Will we ever see a season like this again? Perhaps. Well, there is another list of entries for the college football iceberg. As you can already tell, things are starting to get really interesting, and I've only just started. We've got many more interesting nods to college football coming soon, so if you haven't already, give the video a like and sub up to Squidtard Sports. I'll see you guys in the next part, and as always, thank you for watching.